Welcome to WhyOWhyTV, the channel where curiosity comes first. Let's dive in. Sound of a satisfying yawn. Ah, that felt good, didn't it? Yawning. It's one of the most common and most mysterious human behaviors. I bet just hearing me talk about it, maybe even seeing the word on your screen, is making you want to yawn right now. Go on, let it out. We all do it. But have you ever stopped to wonder? Is it just a simple sign that you need more sleep? A silent protest against a boring lecture? Or could this universal reflex be a sophisticated biological mechanism, a secret superpower hiding in plain sight? Today we're diving deep into the science of the yawn. This is WhyOWhyTV, where we tackle the questions you've always wondered about and uncover the truly fascinating answers. So what exactly a yawn? At its core, yawning is a powerful, semi-involuntary reflex. It starts with a slow, wide opening of the mouth, followed by a long, deep inhalation of air that fills the lungs. Your jaw stretches to its limit, your eardrums flex, and your eyes might even scrunch up and water. Then comes the peak, a brief moment of tension, followed by a slow, satisfying exhale. The whole process lasts about 6 seconds on average, but it feels like a mini reboot for your entire body. And it's not just you. This exact sequence is performed by people in every culture on Earth. But here's where it gets really strange. This reflex starts incredibly early. Scientists using 4D ultrasound scans have observed fetuses yawning as early as 11 weeks into gestation. Think about that. Before we can even breathe air, before we're even born, we are already yawning in the womb. This single fact is a massive clue, because it tells us that whatever yawning is for, it probably isn't about breathing. So if it's not for breathing, what is it for? For a very long time, the most popular explanation was the oxygen theory. It seemed perfectly logical. When we get drowsy or bored, our breathing tends to become shallower. The theory went that our body detects a buildup of carbon dioxide and a lack of oxygen in the blood. In response, it triggers a massive yawn to force a deep breath, flooding the lungs with fresh oxygen and flushing out the CO2. It's a neat and tidy explanation, and it was taught as fact for decades. There was just one problem: it's wrong. In a series of clever experiments, scientists tested this very idea. They had volunteers breathe air with higher than normal levels of oxygen. According to the theory, this should have decreased their yawning. It didn't. Then, they had them breathe air with excess carbon dioxide, which should have their yawning. Again, it had no effect. The conclusion was inescapable. Yawning has little to nothing to do with the oxygen levels in our blood. And if you think about it, it makes sense. As our little factual joke goes, if yawning was really about a desperate need for oxygen, marathon runners who are constantly in an oxygen deficit would be yawning their way across the finish line. And trust me, they're not. So if it's not about oxygen, what is the leading theory today? Say hello to the brain cooling or thermoregulatory hypothesis. The idea is that your brain works best within a narrow temperature range, much like a computer processor. When it starts to overheat from fatigue, stress, or even just thinking too hard, it needs a cooling system. A yawn, this theory proposes, is that system. It's like a built-in radiator for your head. Let's break down how it works. First, the powerful stretch of your jaw muscles during a yawn dramatically increases blood flow to the skull. Second, the deep, gaping inhalation brings a rush of cooler, ambient air into your nasal and sinus cavities. These cavities are lined with a dense network of blood vessels. As the cool air passes over them, it chills the blood within, just like a radiator cools engine fluid. This freshly cooled blood is then immediately circulated up to your brain, lowering its overall temperature. The final exhale then expels the now warmed air. It's an elegant and efficient piece of biological engineering, and there's compelling evidence to back it up. For instance, studies have shown that holding a cold compress to your forehead can significantly reduce the frequency of yawning, while a warm compress does the opposite. And here's a great real-world example. People yawn more in the summer than in the winter. Why? Because in the winter, the cold air outside is effective at cooling the brain, so the body doesn't need to trigger a yawn. But in the summer, when the ambient air is closer to our body temperature, the brain needs that extra cooling boost more often. But cooling the brain doesn't explain one of the most peculiar things about yawning: its contagiousness. You see someone yawn, you hear someone yawn, you even just about yawning, and suddenly you have an almost irresistible urge to do it yourself. This isn't your imagination. It's a well-documented neurological phenomenon known as echo phenomenon. And the leading explanation for it is fascinating: empathy. Neuroscientists using fMRI scans have found that when we see someone else yawn, the parts of our brain associated with social behavior and empathy light up. We are subconsciously mirroring the other person's state. In fact, studies have shown a direct correlation. People who score higher on empathy tests are more susceptible to contagious yawning. Children don't typically start catching yawns until around age 4 or 5, which is right around the time they develop more complex social-emotional skills. So, what's the evolutionary advantage? It might be a primitive, non-verbal way for a social group to synchronize their mental state. Imagine our ancient ancestors huddled together. If one person, perhaps a lookout, yawns, it could signal a change in alertness to the entire group. It's a way of getting everyone on the same page, physiologically. Of course, in the modern world, this has a slightly different and often funnier application. If you're in a long meeting and one person lets out a big yawn and a chain reaction starts, it's basically an unspoken collective agreement. Yep, we're all on the same page. This is boring. So from a simple reflex to a complex social signal, the yawn is far more than just a sign of being tired. But the story doesn't end with humans. But here's where it gets really weird. Another fascinating twist. Yawns are contagious. I bet some of you watching have already yawned. Just hearing about yawning or seeing someone else do it can trigger one of your own. Scientists believe this is deeply linked to empathy. It's driven by the same parts of the brain, like mirror neurons, that help us understand others' emotions. Think of it as a subconscious signal for group cohesion, a way for a tribe to sync their alertness levels. And here's a fun fact for your next board meeting. Studies show contagious yawning is most potent in boring situations. So if everyone starts yawning during your presentation, it's just extreme empathy. This social phenomenon isn't just for humans. Yawning is a universal language across the animal kingdom. From dogs and chimpanzees to snakes and even fish, everybody's doing it. But what's truly remarkable is that contagious yawning also exists in other species. Your dog might yawn right after you do, not to mock your sleep schedule, but as a sign of social connection. And they're not alone. Fun fact, parakeets can catch yawns from each other, making them the tiniest sleepy copycats. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from our primate cousins. Chimpanzees will contagiously yawn, not just with each other, but also with humans they have a strong bond with, like a familiar zookeeper. A powerful display of cross-species empathy. So if yawning isn't always about being tired, when does it happen? Humans yawn most often when we're tired or just waking up, sure. But we also yawn when we're bored or, paradoxically, anxious before a big event. These are all moments of transition. Yawning seems to be the body's way of managing these shifts, moving from a state of rest to alertness, or vice versa. The best analogy? It's like hitting the refresh button on your web browser. A yawn might just be your brain's way of resetting its state, clearing out the mental clutter to prepare for what's next. So, why do we yawn? We've debunked the old oxygen myth, explored the compelling brain cooling theory, the social bonding of contagious yawning, and the idea of a neurological reset. The truth is, the complete answer is still a mystery. It's likely not one single reason, but a complex mix of physiological and social functions. And that's what makes this seemingly simple reflex so endlessly fascinating. This has been WhyOWhyTV. We hope we've given you something to think about the next time you feel that familiar deep breath coming on. If this video made you yawn, and we bet it did, or if you learned something new, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never stop asking why. Speaking of reflexes, ever wondered why we sneeze in bright sunlight? Join us next time as we unpack the explosive science of the sneeze. You won't want to miss it.